What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and around the world on TV, radio and online. I bid you all good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in all the world's time zones. This is The More Show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with my guest, Allison Carmen, who is the author of the book, The Gift of Maybe. Allison Carmen, welcome to the show.
Oh, Kevin, thanks for having me.
Allison, it's a pleasure to have you on. It really is. And I think this interview today will apply to so many people as well. Now, just to begin with, just tell the audience a bit about your journey and how you came to write The Gift of Maybe.
Well, I am a former attorney. I was a stressed out attorney living in the middle of New York City, and I was addicted to certainty. If I didn't know what was going to happen next in my life, I projected things were going to be bad or they wouldn't work out. And I think a lot of us have this addiction in the world today. We're always concerned about what's going to happen next. We're worried that we're not going to have ground, that things aren't going to work out. And so we write stories to make ourselves feel better. We write stories like, I'm going to have this job until I retire. I'm going to have this amount of money in the bank at the age of 50. My child will go to this college and everything will be okay. And we hold on to these stories for dear life. But life has the unexpected. So when things don't work out, you lose your job, you don't have that kind of money, we often spin out of control, wondering what's going on. And even though intellectually we know there's so many ways life can work out, emotionally we fail to understand this. So in my life, what I did is I wrote this story that I was going to go to law school. I was going to get a job at a really large law firm. I was going to make a ton of money. I was going to marry this great guy. And the blues were going to come down, and I would have no more worries in my life. And I actually pursued these goals. And I remember walking to work my first day saying, I've arrived. I got this great job. I'm looking over, in the middle of New York City, looking over the Central Park West. Life is great. But the second day of work, my office mate comes in and says, hey, Allison, did you hear they're firing half the first years? And I was a first year. So all of a sudden my head starts to spin. What happens if I lose this job? How will I pay my rent? What will my parents think? And after a while, I stopped sleeping and my immune system became compromised. So I started to run to all these doctors hoping that they could help me. And they took all this blood work, and it turns out they found nothing wrong, but they gave me this little blue pill for my anxiety. And they said, take this blue pill and everything would be okay. But even that made me anxious. So for a very long time, I had a lot of trouble dealing with the twists and turns of life. And then one day I heard this beautiful story, and it's a Taoist story. And I'm going to share it with you right now. It's about this farmer. And the farmer has a horse, and the horse runs away. And the neighbor comes by and says, you have the worst luck. And the farmer says, maybe. And the next day, the horse comes back with 5 mares. And the neighbor comes by to the farmer and says, you have the best luck. And the farmer says, maybe. And the next day, the farmer's son is on the horse. He falls off and breaks his leg. And the neighbor comes by and says, you have the worst luck. And the farmer says, maybe. But the next day, the army comes to take his son to war, and they can't take him because his leg is broken. And the neighbor comes by and says, you have the best luck. And the farmer says, maybe. And it's a Taoist story. And to a Taoist, things are neither good or bad. But for me, when I heard this story, I actually felt a pop in my chest, because in my life, I was so worried that things weren't working out when the unexpected happened. I never realized that just because something's not working out in the moment, maybe this is good, or maybe it'll get better, or maybe something else will happen. So maybe took me to this place where I was so afraid of life, and landed me in this place where I was filled with hope and possibility, because I recognized there's more to life than one way. Everything in life has possibilities. Things always change, and life always has maybe.
Absolutely. And I think one thing for certain is the word, change. That everything always changes. That's the one certainty, in life that we have. And, nothing's guaranteed. And sometimes I also think as well nowadays that, when we are going through the midst of change as well, it's better to go, with the currents of the stream in a sense, than go against it. We're scared sometimes to go with the easiest path, or the path of least resistance in a sense. Do you think that comes from, this idea of maybe comes from, trusting your intuitive side as well?
I do, but not everybody can do this. There are some people in life that have faith. Sometimes it's based in God, or sometimes they just go with the flow of life and they're okay. But there are a lot of us that don't have that faith because we're so scared we're not okay. I mean, have a child and not be attached to that child and want to know that they're okay. So it's hard for a lot of us. So we struggle. And so with this idea of maybe, I always say it's like a bridge between belief and faith. Now, belief are the stories that we tell. I need this to happen to be okay. If you have faith, you're just going to sit back and whatever happens, happens. And you know that life will take you to a new place. So what maybe does, it takes us to that place where when the unexpected happens, you lose your job, you have a health scare. It allows you to say, okay, this is happening in my life and I might not be happy about it, but things change. But within that change, there's hope and possibility. That's the piece we forget. We're so scared we're not okay that we forget the unknown. That's where our life will change again. That's where the goodies are. That's where the hope is. That's where the possibility is. So maybe always reminds us that we're not stuck, that maybe my thoughts are not true. Maybe everything will be okay. And so when we realize this, we can come back to the present with a little more peace, a little more openness, recognizing things will change. It allows us to come back to this moment and say, what is still possible for me now? And I've seen so many people go from a place of pure fear to hope just from this little word.
And that's where you ended up as well, from fear into being very in the moment, would you say?
Well, I have to say, I always say, beware of the person who wrote the book. I use maybe every day. But because of this word, I've cultivated more faith, because when you're willing to hang out in uncertainty, when you're willing to open up to it, you do cultivate a type of faith, because you start to see that life has an ebb and flow. Life has many cycles at one time. Sometimes your work life is really great, and your relationship with your spouse, your partner is really great, and then you're struggling with the relationship with your sister-in-law or the relationship with your mother. things are always moving. But the more you hang out in this open space, the more you'll cultivate faith and realize, okay, things are not exactly how I want them to be in this moment, but things will keep shifting. Life will keep changing. My life has hope and possibility.
But obviously, there are those who, are very logical in a sense, and, unless it's, unless there's data or proof there that this particular way forward, is going to pay off for them, that, things are going to be, the money's going to be there for them, and they're not just going, with too much gut instinct, that they won't take the chance otherwise.
Right. But they're going to suffer. See, that's for me, I couldn't stand the suffering. When you're only going to take that leap, when you're only going to make that decision, when you're only going to believe things are good, when you actually see it, when you actually prove it, you're going to suffer, because we all know there's the unexpected in life. I mean, like a business person will come to me and they'll be starting a business, and they're like, Allison, at the end of the month, I'm going to have $30,000 and 5 new clients. And if at the end of the month he has $10,000 and 2 clients, if he needs to see his goal right then, right, at that moment, he's going to give up. He's not going to be able to hold, going forward with his business. He won't be able to continue, because he's going to say life's not working out. It never goes the way we expect. So without this idea of maybe we're going to suffer and tell the story, things aren't working out, I'm doomed, my child will never get better, I'll never get another job. At some point, something has to give. Either you're going to suffer your whole life, which I couldn't handle, or you're going to have to embrace the unknown. And for me, I was able to do it through this idea of maybe.
Right. So in a sense, then, maybe, okay, for example, we're going through some change right now. Something major's come up. It's not gone the way we've planned, but maybe it'll be okay.
Right, or maybe it'll get better, or maybe I need to do something different. What I usually do is I have this great exercise in the first chapter of the book, and I think it's the best way to look at maybe. You ask yourself what your biggest fear is. I mean, ultimately, I think our biggest fear is that we think we're not okay. We think that we're on shaky ground and life's never going to work out. But you use the thing that's right in front of you. Like we talked about the job. I don't have a job. I'm worried that I'm never going to make enough money. I'm worried I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. And then you ask yourself, am I actually certain that thought is true? Am I absolutely certain that I'm never going to get another job? I'm never going to make more money? And most of the time, we're not absolutely certain. So then when we realize we're not certain that our worst fear is what is going to transpire, you start writing maybe statements down. Very basic. Maybe everything is good. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe I'm okay. And then you get specific. Maybe I need to call Joan to see if she has a job for me. Maybe I need to take a class. Maybe I need to just be present in this moment and have some patience and see what happens next. If you do this for 20 minutes and you write these maybe statements down, I can almost guarantee you're going to feel lighter, because you've gone from this really cramped space in your brain where you believed only one thing was possible to realizing that other things are possible, even if you can't see them in the moment. So again, it takes us from this place of suffering, of doom, to a more open place. Even if you still have your fear, that's okay. But other things exist. At that moment, life, every breath, life has maybe.
Yes. As others have said, in other authors out there, in a sense, have said that, for example, Eckhart Tolle talks about the power of now as well, obviously, and it kind of summarizes like this: that if we come into whatever's going on around us, whatever worst case scenario, like you say, we're about to lose our home, or that there's some impending, something terrible about to, as far as we're concerned, about to occur. If we just come back to the moment now, right now, actually everything is perfect now. It's the coming out of time and going into the future, or going back over something that's happened in the past that's gone. When we go out of the current moment now, that's when we tend to see the worst case scenario. Would you not say?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I love the power of now. But if I go up to any of my clients and I would look at them and say, just be in the moment. Just be in the moment. Stop. Be in the moment. And he's right. What he says is, yes, being in the moment is what it's all about. Because the fear is from projecting into the future and worrying about the past. But people, they can't just empty their minds. So what maybe is, it's actually a tool to get you back to the moment. because people feel so desperate and they feel so doomed. Maybe it gives you hope. It gives you hope that it ends the projection. The reason why it ends the projection about your future is because you recognize you don't know the answer, but maybe it'll still be okay. So you're able to sit back and say, okay, I'm not as worried about the future because I realize that there's still hope and things could work out. I don't know the answer, but I feel hopeful because life has maybe. So often that can end the future projection. And then when you look at the past, often some of the times people are not worried or upset because of the future. They're carrying around the past. I mean, people come into my office so often with this story of regret. If I would have went into business with Joe 5 years ago, I would be a millionaire today. If I would have married that girl, things would have been great. And we tell these stories, but we actually have no idea how things would have been. And because we look at our lives now and it seems to have all the aches and pains of living, and yet the story of regret looks so clean and beautiful, but we forget that had we made those decisions, we would have had other twists and turns. We could have been at the wrong place at the wrong time. Joe could have screwed us over. The girl could have ended up not being stable. We have no idea. So what maybe says is you don't know what would have been. But all you know is here you are in this moment with the hope and possibility that maybe your life could be better from this point forward. So yes, it's great to be in the moment, but maybe it's a tool to help you get there. Because without maybe, I could never be present. I was so afraid that things were going to be bad in my life, that things weren't going to work out. No matter what anyone said to me, it didn't matter. But it was maybe that made me recognize this unknown place is my best friend. If I want life to change, that's where it's going to happen. So instead of shutting down to uncertainty, I opened up. And when people are able to look at the unknown with a little softer perspective and see it as something that might be beneficial for them, everything starts to change, and then they can become more present.
Okay, well, you talk about in one of your chapters as well about letting go of the past, but holding on to the wisdom as well. Just to basically explain that to us, what you mean there.
Well, what happens is that fear clouds us. Fear clouds our wisdom. You know, sometimes you could be looking at something and it looks so clear to you, but it's all about the fear. I'm going to hold on to my business isn't working out right now. Things are really bad. I'm losing money, but I'm so afraid of what I will do when this business closes. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times, I'm talking about a client would say this, not me, how many times people come in and tell me this, that they're so afraid to close the shop. They're so afraid to close the door because when it closes, what will they do next? So what's happening is the fear is keeping them locked into something that's not working anymore. So often what maybe does, it allows us to release this fear and realize that life has hope and possibility. But when it comes to the past, you know, we have these fears. People sold us these things. Sometimes, you know, maybe you grew up and your dad told you weren't good enough, or someone told you that idea you have really is not good, or you could never accomplish that. And we bring those thoughts into the present, and therefore we don't do anything new. We just live this life and we're not happy and things aren't changing. But with this idea of maybe you could question the past. Maybe what my father said about me is not true. Maybe I can achieve this. Maybe this business idea is good. So it doesn't demand that you change, but it allows you to kind of free yourself from the past. And it gives you this little light, this little opening that says, well, maybe something else is possible for me. Maybe I can do this. And it's like a little platform to stand on to try something new. So it's freeing you from the past, and it's allowing you to have a new future. And it's just one little word, and it sounds so simple, but this one little word takes you from this really stuck place to this really open place. It reminds you you're not doomed. Things always change, and within that change, there's always hope.
Okay, so if I just use myself as an example right now, I said off air as well about I had a business. Well, I've got a business, and I had a business. I've got a business partner in a sense, right? We were looking to open this new e-commerce store, and I felt that there wasn't enough money to see us through because maybe it wouldn't break, you know, within the 2 months after launching it. Maybe it would have taken, 6 months to get it launched. And of course, we haven't had enough money to see us through for those 6 months because we don't know projected wise whether, how long it's going to be. If we had some cash behind us, it wouldn't be a problem. How do you apply maybe in this sense? Because in a way, we've both turned around and said, well, maybe this is not what we should be doing then. There's another way forward, another angle to start the business off to begin with.
Well, you seem like you're using it the right way. I mean, there's, we have we have experience. A lot of us understand marketing. We understand finance. If you're looking at your business, and e-commerce it's a very capital intensive business to go into. So that's a time where you could look at what it costs other businesses. You could do a projection of how much it's going to cost. I mean, that's a foundation. And then you have to look at, am I being logical? Am I being intuitive? Am I looking at my wisdom, or am I stuck in fear? Because you're looking at your business and you're saying, it doesn't look like we have enough business for the next 2 months. You're saying, well, maybe there's another way. Maybe we could launch it another way. Maybe we could raise money. Maybe we haven't met the right partner yet. I mean, so yes, you have to balance things out. But what I find you use the maybe for is to let go of the fear, because often somebody in your situation, the story they would come to me with is, I want to start this business. I only have 2 months of capital. I know it takes a long time for stuff to come in, but it's never going to work because I'm never going to find the money, and I'm never going to find another way, because you need $1 million to launch this. That's where this person is stuck. They're stuck because they're realizing at this moment they don't have what they need. So they're looking into the future and they're saying they don't see the answer. And because they don't see the answer, they're lost. They're saying it's never going to work out. You seem to me like you're saying, okay, I realize I only have 2 months of capital, but maybe there's another way. And when you start to engage in their maybes another way, you're telling life, I'm available. I'm available to find new ways to launch this. And for all you know, you're going to leave the studio today, wherever you are. You're going to go out tonight and you're going to meet somebody who's interested in your business, or someone's going to introduce you to somebody. Or maybe there's a way to launch it with less capital. And that's what's so beautiful about maybe, because it keeps you in this place of hope. As a businessman, you're recognizing, hey, I don't have the dough. But with this idea of maybe, you're going to be so expansive that you're going to figure out a way to launch this thing one way or another, if that's what you choose to do. Because you're going to be open, you're going to be fluid, and you're going to keep looking at different ideas and different things. And eventually, I believe when people are in maybe, and the idea is aligned with who they truly are, they do find their way. And it often doesn't look the way you thought it was going to on day one, but that's the beauty of life. If things always looked exactly as we thought, then we would never grow, we would never learn. And what would be the point of being here in the first place? So it sounds to me like you're in the right place. You're saying, I have to find another way.
Yeah, well, I completely agree with you, and actually the way forward is actually something completely different to find the capital, to then come back with some money behind us to go into this e-commerce business. But what we're going to have to do that is parallel dimensions away from what we were going to do, and that's allowing, I think, as well, life to flow as well. Go with the flow, go with the easier path. But sometimes, as you've said, there's difficult decisions to make within that process, and you think that there's part of you're losing as well, or there's a shame to it sometimes as well, that you've not been successful in the way that you planned. There's lots of things that go on, and I suppose you see a whole variety of clients as well.
I can even tell you the story of the book of The Gift of Maybe. I mean, originally I had an offer that this very wealthy publisher overseas liked my idea. He made me an offer when I was just doing business consulting and coaching, and he's like, when you want to write your first book, call me. I was like, oh, I'll write a book. And I went home and I started writing, and I was not a writer at the time. And I wrote for 6 months, and I handed it in thinking, I have this book deal, and I'm going to spread the word of maybe. And he wrote me back, and he's like, Allison, you either need an editor or you need to take a class in writing. And so, but I was so in maybe that I didn't even stop to say, oh, this is bad. He didn't take my book. I was like, okay, well, what do I need to do? And I literally just did that exercise, and I decided to write a book proposal. And then I landed an agent, and then the story went, oh, I have an agent now. I finished the book, and she sent it out, and I got 30 rejections. And the rejections were, who is this lady? We love the idea of maybe, but she's a nobody. So instead of getting down saying, okay, no one's ever going to publish my book, I started to blog. And today I blog for Psychology Today, HuffPost. At the time, I had this little blog that maybe 10 people read. And over time, I built my platform, and I built my Facebook following, and I built my Twitter following, and I just kept spreading the word. And I begged my agent to send it out again. She sent it out again, and you know what I got? More rejections. And again, I said, okay, this is what's happening. What can I do next? And just like your business, you're looking for another way. I couldn't wait anymore. And I decided to self-publish the book. And I went on to Amazon, and they have this great platform called Create Space. And I published the book. And then through this Kindle Select program, I was able to give my book away for free for 3 days. And over 30,000 people downloaded my book the first 2 days. I went on the Amazon bestseller list for free books. And within 3 weeks, I had a big deal from a big publisher. Penguin Random House bought my book.
No way. Wow.
Yes. So, but it was all about the maybe. If I had, and I'm not saying that I never had a disappointment, but we're the one that tells the story of how it needs to be. Like your story is, well, I'm not saying this is your story, but your story could be, I should have enough capital to launch this. And because I don't have enough capital, there's something wrong. But for all we know, life is working out exactly as we planned. For me, when I look at, like now I'm a blogger, like I said, I write for Psychology Today, I write for HuffPost, I write for Mind, Body, Green. I have this expansive life. And because I'm a blogger, I don't have to wait for a big publisher to tell me it's okay for me to spread my work. Now I have the big publisher. Now I'm a blogger. Everything seems to have fit in. And having that rejection, it made me a stronger person.
Of course it did.
Yeah, because what I had to dig so deep within myself and say, who are you? Are you about a bunch of people telling you that you're great or you're okay? Or are you somebody who really believes in the work? And are you going to find the steady place within yourself? And that's what happens when people grow businesses. I often find sometimes if someone gets $1 million the first day, they blow it. They blow it because they just blow it all on marketing and social media. And then 6 months later, they're out of business. And I find sometimes people who don't have the capital and have to be really smart about their decisions and take things slow and be very creative, they're the ones in the long haul that make the most money. And I actually work with so many entrepreneurs over time. I mean, I have clients who have had these great comfy jobs that lose their jobs. And I have these entrepreneurs that have struggled with capital for years. And today they're so successful because they had to be creative. They had to watch the bottom line and they had to make really smart decisions. And because they were in maybe and they didn't once the fear takes over, that's when you make the wrong turn. So as far as I'm concerned, you seem like you're in the exact place you need to be with your business. Just like I was with my book. I just kept going back to this place of maybe. It didn't make me a fool. It made me hopeful and smart, and it connected me to my wisdom.
I think as well, what's helped me to be in that space as well, if there's any for other people out there, is I've used the law of attraction quite a bit just recently as well. I've really started to apply that, and I don't know if that's something that you are into, whether you use or you get your clients to use, but the idea of saying that you are this already, even though you may not have it. Rather than the experience of wanting something, you say, I already am. I am a successful businessman. I am a multimillionaire. I am loved.
But if you're afraid of uncertainty, it's going to be hard to hold those thoughts. I mean, if you go back to Norman Vincent Peale's book, The Power of Positive Thinking, that was God-based. He said, be positive because God will take care of everything. So yeah, I love positive thinking. I love the law of attraction. But if you're so afraid, like if you wake up in the morning, you're like, today I'm going to land these clients, and you don't land these clients. So let's say if you wake up in the morning, you're like, the law of attraction, I have this client today. And you go to the office and you don't get the client. Now, some people can continue on and say, I have this client, and keep saying it. And over time, I'm sure they'll land a client. But if you're so afraid of the unknown and you're so afraid you're not going to be able to pay your mortgage, you're not going to be able to pay your rent, you might not be able to hold that thought. And then the whole day is filled with, I am, I'm not, I am, I'm not. So what maybe does, it allows you to go back to that positive place because it allows you to see life's not working out right now. I didn't expect this, but maybe I could still achieve my goal. So for someone who's so afraid of uncertainty, some of those tools are hard for them. So maybe just helps them get back to this place where they see, yes, life is filled with hope and possibility, and maybe everything will be okay. So if you could hold that, that's beautiful. But if you get stuck, maybe it's a beautiful place to bring you back.
Yeah, and do you feel as well, maybe the belief's not the right word, but feel that, as you've said, life has our best intention all the time. So when things don't work out, and with hindsight, when you can look back, isn't it always the case that, oh, that happened for a great reason that did? Isn't that, even though in the darkest times, only when you can, look back, and unfortunately we don't have all of a crystal ball, you
Right.
can just see that, if you could apply this, that's what I'm saying it for, that whatever's going on right now in your life, maybe it's a bigger purpose for you that you can't see right now.
And that gives people, that's one of my favorite maybe statements. If you can get there, it's a beautiful place to be. I personally see in my life that everything that's happened has brought me to this moment. And with maybe, I could say that clearly. But some people need the maybe statement because they're not exactly sure. And sometimes really horrible things happen and people can't make the connection. So they can't look back and say that was meant to be. They can only say, well, maybe I'm okay and maybe things will change. I think you and I are of the thinking that our past has brought us to this moment filled with hope and possibility of what will happen next in our lives. And yeah, I think it gives you comfort in this moment when you're going through a hardship to say, maybe this is meant to be. Maybe I needed this. Maybe I'll see something. But sometimes all people could say is, maybe I'm still going to be okay. So it depends who you are. Some people have a relationship with the universe like you and I, where we're always looking at what's meant to be and what's happening and what can I learn. And other people can't do that, but they could still use maybe in another way and just use the comfort that I can't handle what happened before and I can't handle what's happening in the moment, but maybe I'm still okay. Maybe I could accept this and find another way to live. And what's interesting is that there was this, I'll tell you the story. There was this fellow that I gave my book to years ago when it was self-published, and he had just lost his wife. And when I gave him the book, he said to me, he read it, he said, Allison, I hated your book. He said, because my life is horrible and my life will never get better. I lost my wife and I don't want to hear about maybe. And 2 years later, and I remember it always bothered me, like, wow, like, does a book not work for everybody? And then 2 years later, he came up to me and he said, Allison, I just want to thank you. The time that I got this book, I was grieving, and I believe people need to feel what they have to feel. I think if you pretend you don't let things out and you pretend you're happy when you're not, it festers inside your body. So he was grieving and he had to feel the grieving. But after a while, he came to this place where he was still here, he was still breathing. And he said, maybe there's something else in my life. Maybe I can still experience something. I'm not happy my wife is gone, but here I am. And today he actually has a girlfriend. It doesn't say, maybe doesn't say he's happier with the girlfriend than he was his wife. It merely says, you're still here. Maybe something else is possible for you to experience.
Yeah,
so everybody's going to have their own experience with maybe, depending how they think and live their life.
I'm so glad you just brought that up there, because that's kind of where I wanted to go next. So you kind of read my mind on that. That when we are going through a grieving process, anything is just, rejected in a way, because, you need to be at that place, and it's not easy, especially when, like, the story, of the gentleman losing his wife there. I mean, that's never, no matter how spiritual even I may be, grief is a natural process, full stop.
Right. Yeah. And that's why some of these, like The Secret and the Law of Attraction, I love it, but you still have to allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. You have to. It's in you. And to me, it's like, allow it to come up.
Do you not?
And then after a while, maybe's always there for you. It's like this little doorway that you can go to whenever you need it, whenever you're ready. And maybe people are like that with the Law of Attraction too, that feel what you're feeling. And when you're ready, start to visualize again. But just allow yourself that space, because without it, I think we're holding it in. And when we hold it in, it festers within us, and it's going to come up again and again and again and again within us. And I believe we're going to keep manifesting it until we allow it to come up. We look at it, we become aware, and then at some point, hopefully, we're going to embrace maybe and say, what else is possible? Even if you're not happy in your life at this moment, or even if you say, nothing will ever be as great as the past, you're still here. So something is possible. There's something left to experience. Sometimes it's a meal. Sometimes it's a beautiful phone call. Like, I know people who have sick children, and their maybe is holding their child's hand for the day and having some conversation and having a little laugh. It depends where you are in your life, but maybe is available to us every day. Sometimes it's a huge goal, and sometimes it's just a smile between you and your spouse. It just depends where you are in your life in the moment.
Yeah, that's right, because there are those suffering out there, and
right.
and you can, like you say, you can apply this to that, and it's the smallest things sometimes. It's not all about, as we've mentioned, the business side. It's not about the money all the time. It's there's greater things than that taking place.
Right.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you as well, how is it sort of maybe different from positive thinking as well, just to sort of clear that up?
Okay. Well, again, as I said before, I love positive thinking. But if you're afraid of uncertainty, it's going to be hard to hold it. Like I said before, you wake up in the morning, you say, I'm going to land this client. I'm going to have a great time at lunch with my family. My child's going to do well on the test. And all of a sudden, nothing's going as you expected. And if you're somebody that can hold positive thoughts, you'd be like, so what? I didn't land the client. Oh, so what? My kids were rowdy at lunch and my child got a C. But if you're afraid that your child getting a C means they won't be successful in the future, you're not going to be able to stay positive because you're so afraid what this moment means for the future. And that's why we get messed up, because we're so afraid when things don't work out today, that means that we're doomed tomorrow or things are going to get worse. So what maybe does, it allows you to shift the relationship with uncertainty. You could look at your day and say, okay, I didn't land that client, but maybe I'll land another one. All right, we didn't have a great lunch, but maybe we could have a great dinner or something else will happen. And my child got to see it. Maybe they'll study, or maybe if my child gets C's through school, they'll still be okay. So it makes us feel like, okay, all this is happening, but life can change. And in that change, I still have hope. And then you can go back to your positive thoughts and make your plan. So it's basically where you are. So I find for me, maybe allows me, because I have this issue with uncertainty, maybe allows me to hold this positive thought. Because I see the twists and turns, but when it doesn't work out exactly as I planned, I can go back and say, okay, maybe everything's still okay. Maybe it'll get better. And then I can make another, and then I can hold a new positive thought. So I find it's like a game between positive thinking and maybe. And if you could play with both of them, I think you're going to have a pretty good attitude every day. And like I said, some people are able to be positive thinkers and they don't need maybe. But the rest of us who struggle with the unknown, maybe is a great tool just to throw in there with all your other ones.
Or maybe those positive thinkers are just embracing maybe naturally without, even knowing they're doing it.
It could be. I always say anybody who is a straight positive thinker or has a ton of faith doesn't need my book. My book is for those who struggle with the unknown. And it just helps us get back to these places where we can live with more joy and more openness. Because when you have hope, you could be present. When you have hope, you're more creative. When you have hope, you're more open to everything that can happen in life. So it's just a more joyous way to live when you embrace this idea.
Well, I just want to say as well that we're just sort of skimming on a lot of these chapters here. There's a lot more in this book than just what we're discussing here. Really, obviously we're on a limited time, and to try to get your book all in the 1 hour is maybe impossible, right? But we're trying to get the best bits here, where anyone watching this, this could be a life changer for them as well, and that's the most important part as well, because you've helped a lot of people on your journey, probably some that you'll never meet as well, which is the great thing about your work and the work that you do. But just go into relationships as well, because that's obviously a big one for people out there, just daily relationships. How can maybe help us in our daily relationships with our family and with our loved ones?
Okay. Well, out of all the areas that maybe has helped me with it, it happens to be parenting. Because like I said before, we need to know our kids are okay. It's hard to know anything else because they're so important to us. They're like our right arm. So when something happens to them, we can really spin out of control. As much as we're worried about our money and we're worried about our homes, our kids is something that it's really hard when they suffer. It's hard for us to watch. So with this idea of maybe it allows us to come to every moment with our children, whether they're being bullied or they're not doing well in school or they're unhappy, whatever they're going through, to know that life is filled with hope, even if you can't see it in the moment, and that your child has maybe, it helps us as parents. Because if we can embrace maybe everything's okay, maybe the situation will change, it'll get better. It allows us to come to the moment for our child with less stress and more openness, and they're going to see that. If you're stressed out, your child knows. But if you come to your child and you're really in maybe, you're going to fill their lives with hope and possibility, and you're going to really be able to be present for your child and help them through everything that happens to them. And they're actually eventually going to be maybe thinkers. And if you think about all the things that are going on in the world, you can't turn around to your child and say, bad things will never happen to you. because then they don't have the tools. But on the other hand, you want them to be hopeful, even though there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. You want them to feel that life has maybe things can get better. So with this idea, if they really embrace it, when there's a terrorist attack, when there's a problem in the world, if they know life has maybe, they'll be able to see things exactly as they are, but also have hope for the future. Maybe I can change things. Your child might be the person that goes out into the world that dreams really big with this idea of maybe, all things are possible. So the relationship between you and your child, how you face your child, how your child faces the world, maybe is a beautiful tool. And then with the relationships that you have without maybe, we're always going to be holding on to the past. My sister-in-law said something really horrible to me last week, and I'm never going to speak to her again. Or my husband was really angry before about this. We're always going to be telling these stories about how horrendous everybody in our lives acted. But with maybe we could come to the situation and say, well, maybe they're in a bad mood. Maybe I can give them another chance. Maybe I could be open to this moment, because maybe this moment is different than last week, different than last month. So if you can come to relationships with maybe, you're not going to be stuck in the past, and you're going to allow people to come to you as they are in the moment, and that's how you will experience them. Because without maybe, we're just living the past again and again. And sometimes it comes down to having new experiences with people, being willing to do something different. But often I find it so powerful to sit with someone and say, maybe I could be with this person a different way today. Maybe I don't have to be angry anymore. Maybe I can have some patience and give it more space. So it across the board with relationships, it just provides new beginnings. Every moment's a new beginning, but because we're hanging on to everything everyone has ever said to us, we don't allow it. And with maybe it is. See, to say this is a new beginning is too hard for us, but maybe this is a new beginning. Maybe I could be more open. It's so expansive, and like I said, allows that little light for us to have a new experience. It's very gentle, and I find it really changes everything for people.
No, I think it's absolutely fantastic. What the angle you're coming from, it's very different. The maybe idea is very very different, or maybe we've forgotten the maybe, and you're helping those out there that need to remember that side of them. Do you find have you been very influenced by any sort of spiritual works out there in a sense? Do you meditate? I mean, what's some of your spiritual background as well?
Well, before I found maybe it was just pure chaos. I actually went to the Deepak Chopra Center in California, and I tried to learn transcendental meditation. I love meditation, but at the time, my mind was like I was on the gas all the time. So I couldn't even get to a place where I could take that breath and calm myself down. So for me, maybe was the beginning. Maybe was because when I realized maybe everything is still okay, I was able to kind of sit in this place of more peace, and then I was able to start meditating. So today, I love meditation. I love yoga. I love reading, I love Krishnamurti. I love Ram Dass, Sharon Salzberg. Now I'm able to sit with these things and understand them more. But all I wanted to know, what was going to happen next in my life? And like I said, if I didn't know, I projected it was going to be bad, and that was my game. So there was no place I would read things that were spiritual, and I was just so scared of the future that it didn't matter. So maybe was the beginning for me. So maybe is always my first mantra. I just even if I could just take a deep breath in and just say maybe, and it just makes me more patient, and it makes me able to wait for what's going to happen next in life. And since then, I think that if you could meditate, it's really, that connects us with our center. For me, maybe is a moving meditation. It connects me to my center, but now, this point in my life, I can also take a couple of breaths and find that place. But when I'm out in the world and things are moving really quickly, maybe is the easiest tool for me to grab. Because there's always the unexpected. Even when you think you know how it's going to be with a business and a client, you just don't know. And I don't have time to sit and close my eyes and meditate. But I do always have time to say maybe, and it always clicks me right back in and say, wait a second. This situation still has possibility. This situation still has hope. We are not doomed in this moment. And it just reminds me, there I am, I open up and I'm ready to engage. Even if I find it very unpleasant, the situation I'm in, I'm more open to it. And I'm not having all these crazy knee-jerk reactions. Why is this happening? This shouldn't be happening. I'm able to sit back, watch it, observe, be patient, and realize it's going to change.
Obviously, in the book as well, there's a number of exercises as well to embrace maybe. What would you say is one of your favorite exercises just to come back into maybe?
Well, the exercise I described in the beginning of our conversation, where you write your biggest fear down. Because that really, sometimes writing, I mean, if you have the time, if you're out and about and things are happening really quickly, you pick a mantra. Maybe everything, one of my favorites is maybe everything is okay. Always clicks me back. Maybe my thought's not true. Because sometimes we're upset because we're projecting that things aren't working out. And if you question that thought, maybe my thought's not true, maybe there's something else, that could also bring you back. But if you're home and you have the time and space, I recommend writing your biggest fear down and then asking yourself, are you certain that's true? And most of the time we're not certain, and you just start writing those maybe statements down. And eventually after 10, 20 minutes, you're going to feel lighter because you're going to recognize there's so much more here. Again, we always think everything is A or B. I'm going to get this client, I'm not going to get this client. I'm going to get the money, I'm not going to get the money. There's so many more possibilities than the two that we could possibly imagine in the moment. Just because we don't know doesn't mean things are not working out. And maybe reminds us of that.
But you wouldn't say we should take foolish risks, though, would you?
I don't know. You'd have to define a foolish risk. I mean, I think that if we're not in fear and we have a solid foundation about who we are and what we want in our lives, and we see something, and listen, everybody thought, I gave up an entire lucrative law practice to become a life coach. People thought I was crazy. They looked at me, I represent a lot of, big businesses, and they're like, you're doing what? So for me, a lot of people thought it was crazy and foolish for me to throw that all away, but this is what I needed to do for my life. So it depends. I mean, I don't think, that somebody should, if they have a family to support, mortgage the house to the hilt and, invest in, people being able to fly out of windows. No, but, I think most of us have more ground than that. And we have a sense of who we are and what our responsibilities are. But life has maybe, and miracles do happen. So we balance it out. If we're not in fear, I believe we end up in the right place. It's the fear that creates the chaos. It's the fear that would make someone take a foolish risk because they're so afraid. It's almost like you're at the casino and you're losing money and you're so afraid you just throw all your money down at once because you're all fear driven. But when the fear is gone and we're in this place of maybe, I find you make better decisions because you're looking at what you want and you're seeing that there's so many different ways it can happen. I think you're going to have more patience. With maybe we have more patience. With fear, we're impatient, we're more impulsive, and that's when we take the foolish risks.
And yeah, absolutely. And when you embrace maybe, there's, like you say, so many different scenarios that can come up from that, and seeing it with a clearer head perhaps allows you to see a different way. As we've said before, sometimes when you think you're going down the wrong road, or it feels like you're going down a road of suffering, for example, that when embracing maybe can help you to see it from a different perspective and potentially see a better road with other options that you couldn't see before because you're more centered, you're more in the moment.
Right, and if you need to anchor something, like I know that I've had clients who are starting businesses. And they need to anchor themselves. So they'll say, okay, I have enough money. I'm willing to give this 6 months. And there's a marker. I'm willing to go 300 grand into this venture. That's their marker. And then they're done. They have their marker, their 6-month marker. And then it's all about the maybe. So yes, sometimes people need to ground themselves. They need a parameter, but there's nothing wrong with that. When you're not afraid, you're going to create that parameter. Believe me, I have represented some crazy entrepreneurs and they've taken some crazy risks and they've paid off. But for most of us, sometimes we need this little parameter, this little base of what we're willing to do. But after you create that parameter, it's all about the maybe. Because every single day, every decision you make, you have no idea how it's going to work out. And if you're all doom and gloom and every time you don't get the client or the marketing doesn't work out, I have clients who think that someone's going to invest in their business and then they don't, and then they're left hanging. It's all about the maybe. Yeah. It's all about the maybe. But yeah, you have to pay your mortgage. And you have to pay, you have to pay your rent.
Of course.
So you balance things out. But again, it's the fear that creates the chaos, and maybe allows us to drop the fear, connect with our wisdom, connect with our true goals, and also we avail ourselves to so much more as possible. We're more likely to get where we need to go. It's actually a very grounding tool. It sounds like, if it maybe I'm just going to be, just flapping in the wind. But no, When you're in maybe, you're in a more solid place because your relationship with uncertainty is stronger. And that's where you're going to create anything new in your life, is in the unknown.
Obviously, as well, you have international clients. Is that something you still do? I mean, and can you work with people internationally?
Yes, I could work with people. I do a lot of phone work. I mean, even in New York City, I do a lot of phone work. And sometimes Skype, not that often, as you know, that I had a lot of Skype issues before we get on the phone. But yeah, I find it really interesting that there's so much uncertainty all over the world. And yet, even though people are living in different places, often the fear of uncertainty is common across the board. And actually, when the Egyptian government was turning over, I actually started to get a huge following in Egypt. And I was so surprised that I'm writing about stories about people in New York City or people in the United States, and yet the uncertainty, they were feeling the uncertainty. So even if I was telling a story about a cooking business that someone was trying to open up, they understood because they were feeling the upheaval and the turmoil in their own country. So uncertainty is common to everybody. Doesn't matter where you live, what language you have, anywhere, any place. I think when people change that relationship, they're gonna feel stronger and more resilient about their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, okay. Well, obviously we're getting to the end of this interview here, and it's been fascinating information from yourself, and a very unique perspective on everything. What would you say, if you could summarize, was like maybe one of the most important messages of your work?
Hey, it sounds so simple. I've been talking about this one word for about an hour, but I challenge everybody to go out into their life when they are feeling stuck, when they are feeling doomed, when they're having a problem in a relationship, at work, with their children, and use this little word, and you will feel a release, because it takes you from this stuck place where you believe life cannot get better, life cannot change, I will never find my way, and then this little word maybe makes you realize, like, maybe I can, maybe everything's okay, maybe things will get better. And when you expand yourself just a little bit, life starts to open up. There's more hope. There's more possibility. It's one little word, but it changes everything for so many people, because you leave this idea, things are good, things are bad. That's a very difficult place to live, because life's always changing. But with maybe, you forget all that and you just become present to the experience and open to so much more that's happening in your life. And I could say that you have less suffering, more joy, more happiness, more opportunity, and it's a life perspective. And if who's ever watching this can embrace it, I can almost guarantee they will find some more joy in their lives. And that's what living's about. How can we find more joy? How can we be more present? How can we be more kind and loving to each other? And maybe is a beautiful tool to get there.
And your website, and how can people get hold of your book as well?
Okay. AllisonCarmen.com is my website, and I write a lot about maybe business, spirituality, parenting, and I also write for Psychology Today, HuffPost, Mind Body Green, Inc. You can find my book on Amazon.com, also a lot of bookstores, and if you put my name in and the book, I'm all over the web at this point.
Absolutely fantastic.
And also on the Kevin Moore Show.
Oh, we appreciate that. Well, look, Allison, it's been such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on the Moore Show to share your message of maybe. Thank you very much.
Kevin, thank you for having me, and have a great, is it evening there where you are right now?
Evening now, yes.
Oh, have a great evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the Moore Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests via themooreshow.co.uk. So until next time, be safe.